We have been joined by the president of the city council, President Billy Young. Good day. How are you, sir?
Good afternoon, sir. How are you doing? I'm doing great.
So I guess the best thing to do is let's start from the beginning. I don't want to assume that everybody knows your background, where you were born, where you went to school, who your folks were. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
And what you presently do now.
Yes, sir. Well, I am a lifelong resident of Selma, Alabama. I can best be described as a true son of Selma, Alabama. I am the proud son of Mr. Woodrow W. Young. Everybody called him W. W. Young and Mrs. Alice Young. My father taught in and around the Selma and Dallas County area for over 52 years. He was a math teacher, and he gave that passion for math to all of us, his children. I am a proud graduate of the Selma High School, 1993, once a saint, always a saint. After graduating from Selma High, I attended the University of Alabama, where I was an education major. I came back to Selma after graduating, and I served as a teacher in the Selma City School System. I was the gifted and talented teacher for the 6th through 12th grade here in Selma for a few years. And then, after encouragement from my family and my students and from the late, great J.L. Chestnut, I went to law school at the University of Alabama. And there I matriculated and I graduated from law school at the university. And then I went to Montgomery, Alabama, and I served as a law clerk for both civil and criminal cases under presiding judge Charles Price. I had an opportunity to see all kinds of law, to engage in all the different specialties and fields. And then in 2006, I was appointed to serve as an assistant attorney general and assistant counsel at the Alabama Department of Revenue in Montgomery. And that is where I am presently and pleasantly employed. And then in 2020, I decided to step out on faith, and after much prayer, ran for council president for the city of Selma. And the people of Selma did me the honor of electing me to serve. And I've been serving in that capacity since November of 2020. And so I've had a wonderful life in Selma. I've always been in Selma, really and truly. Even when I went to college and law school, I was pretty much back here every Sunday at church at First Baptist, where I have been my entire life. So I can truly say I never left Selma. Selma's in my home, and Selma's in my heart.
So why did you originally run for city council president? Was this the first time you ran for office? And why are you running now?
One of the things that the COVID pandemic did was it allowed me to slow down after 20 plus years in the legal profession. The world slowed down. Everything slowed down. And so I was here through the day a lot, and I started walking. I lost weight during the COVID pandemic because I was able to do a lot of exercise. I was exercising twice a day, doing walking and a little bit of jogging. And I was going through this town, and I was looking at different places, and memories flooded back to me because I could remember when this particular place was open. I could remember where I would go here with my mother and father to do things, and those things were closed, or either they were just no longer there at all. So, and then, I too watched municipal politics, and I was thinking, I, just like everybody else, I complain about things, but what am I, Warren Billy Young, actually doing other than complaining? And I thought about, the city deserves someone with a legal background, with an understanding of the law, that understands checks and balances, understands what needs to be done, compliance. And I offered myself to the people of Selma to serve in this position because I thought, and I still believe, that I had something to contribute to make this place, to make this city that I call home, a better place. So that was why I ran. I ran to make Selma better and to offer my gifts or whatever I have to try to make this city a better city and to make sure that Selma, Alabama was doing what it needed to do.
Now, in the position as city council president, when you got in your first term, was it what you thought it would be? Was there a learning curve? What did you learn in terms of what you could or could not do? And this is your second term?
First term.
No, I'm talking now.
Yeah, if reelected, it'll be my second term.
Your second term.
Yes,
okay, so what do you want to do in the second term to address some of the issues you had in the first?
Like with anything else, with any new job, and this is a job, there was a learning curve. But I am grateful because of my legal training. I kind of knew what to look for to help me with that learning curve. So as for others, things might have taken them a little longer because of major concepts of law. Municipal law is a whole nother animal. And so I was able, with my understanding of statutes, with my understanding of attorney general's opinions, my understanding of ordinances, I was able to grasp some of those concepts. Because the first thing that I had to do was find out exactly what does a council president under the law, what they were required to do, their responsibilities. I looked it up, Code of Alabama, Title 11. It broke it down. Council presidents are to serve, to preside over meetings, to also be able to serve in case the mayor is incapacitated, unable to serve. He or she has to step up. Then I had to look, okay, I found out that's what state law requires. Then I said, okay, what does local law require? Because I know that I had to deal with federal law, I had to deal with state law, I had to deal with local laws. And so then I saw what local law required. And so I was like, okay, this is where I start. I know my lane. And so that's what I had to do, was learn my lane. And then from there, everything else became additional. Everything else was a pile on to what I already knew my foundational was support. So I know from the very beginning of this, I am the presiding officer. I am responsible for selecting committee chairs. I am responsible for calling meetings, making sure adequate notice under the law is provided. All of those things. And then everything else fell into place. And so with unlike others, I came in at a very different time because we were under those COVID mandates. So for the first 5 or 6 months, our meetings were all done on Zoom. So that was a whole nother different beast. I had to learn. I didn't know anything. I will say this. I had never heard of Zoom before the pandemic.
You had to set up a whole nother set of rules because of Zoom.
Because of Zoom. And so I didn't know. And, I had to learn how to operate,
Right.
I had to get on that band, the technology band. But then I had to make sure that our meetings were still in compliance with Title 25 under the Open Meetings Act. So all of those things, having an understanding of the law, because at my core, I believe if the council president and the Selma City Council is responsible for making the laws, at the very least, they need to know the law and they need to follow.
Okay, so now parliamentary procedure. Does Selma use Robert Rules of Order, or is there some other set of rules that still comply with parliamentary procedure?
Selma, Alabama, under our ordinances, has adopted Robert's Rules of Order. Now, there are some of the things that we do that are not exactly the way they are in Robert's Rules of Order. So we have what you call a catch-all provision. So basically it says that anything that we have in our ordinances, that is what we're going to follow. And anything that these ordinances don't tell you about, anything that it doesn't discuss, then you are to go to Robert's Rules of Order. Because there are some things, for instance, the way we may do roll call vote. You don't have to always do the roll call under Robert's Rules of Order. You might not have to use that procedure. You could just do a yay, nay type vote. But we've adopted roll call voting. So anything that we've adopted that's contrary, we use that. But then those things, those matters that pop up that are not covered, then we have to resort to Robert's Rules of Order.
Just for the benefit of our audience and for people who may not understand what parliamentary procedure is or Robert's rules of order, what is a quorum? And what what does that mean? And how often have you never had a quorum to have a meeting?
I am grateful that out of 5 years, out of all the meetings that I've called, whether they are regular council meetings or whether they are special call meetings or whether they are committee meetings, that out of that 5 years, I can only think of one time where I didn't have a quorum. And to have a quorum, when you have the city council, the whole entire council, you must have at least 5 members present to transact business for the city. There are 9 spots, 8 wards, 1 at-large position, council president. You have to have at least 5 councilors present to conduct business for a meeting.
Including yourself?
Including myself,
okay.
Yes. And so if it's a committee meeting, there's usually 3 council members on a committee. And as council president, under the ordinances, I serve as ex officio member of every committee. And so for a committee meeting, I have to have at least 2 council members present. And so I am grateful, like I said, over the 5 years, I can right now sitting here, I can only think of one time where we did not have a quorum. And that's the only time I can think of.
Okay.
So I feel like 5 years, because basically what a lot of people may not understand, the city council generally meets once a week. We have work sessions on the first and third Thursdays of every month. And then we have our regular meetings on the second and fourth Tuesdays of every month. And then we have committee meetings all the time. So basically, our council, we are a working council. And that's one of the things that I value, the relationship I have with the entire council, because as the entire council, we do work together. And that's why they come when we call meetings, that we attend meetings and we get the business done.
Now, let's get into some of the controversial issues. And a good place to start is with the call meetings. I believe Mayor Perkins has called here recently or has requested a meeting with the city council. How does that play out in terms of his role as mayor in relationship to calling meetings to the city council? And do you or do you not have a position on whether or not that was appropriate?
I don't have a problem with Mayor Perkins calling meetings. There is a legal procedure that has to be followed that he has to comply with in order to do that. He has to get proper notice to the presiding officer. He has to give the presiding officer an opportunity to accept or to reject. He has to get with 2 council members. There's a whole law that has to be complied with in order for that to be a lawful meeting. I don't have a problem with the executive of the city calling a meeting. And so that's my position. During the time of this whole last situation, I really didn't comment on it because I didn't have an issue with the mayor calling the meeting. And he called it, and they did not have a quorum. One of the things that I believe as presiding officer, and I kind of understand now why the people create laws, why they create the law the way they did. As presiding officer of the council, I'm pretty aware of everybody's schedule. Just through the years of a working relationship, I know that on Wednesday nights, such and such council gonna be in church.
Right.
I know that on such night somebody gonna be at their little boys' basketball game at the Y. You know, you get to know that working with people. So now I understand why the legislature, when they created that, they started off with the presiding officer, because that's one of those non-written duties. You just start knowing your colleagues,
right,
and you start knowing their schedules, their work schedules, home, all that.
So I could call a meeting, but because I know that your council people expect that on the second and fourth Tuesday there's a council meeting.
Yes.
They plan for that.
Yes, sir.
And same thing with the work session.
Yes.
But when something comes up unexpectedly, the schedules may or may not be able to permit, or they may or may not be able to rearrange.
Yes.
Is what you're saying.
Yes. And so when I have to call, and we've had to call quite a few special call meetings in this term because of the tornado, the natural disaster. So we were doing those a lot. And then other things have popped up where we had to get things done between the meetings. And so when I schedule those special call meetings, I always think about every council member and on whether or not I can get enough to get a quorum. And like I said, even having to call those special call meetings over the years, there's only been one time that I didn't have a quorum.
So now, speaking of the disaster and the tornado, and I noticed that I think there was always, for the last 2 years, one item that I've noticed that seems to be on the agenda is, what funds have come in for a disaster recovery and how are they spent. But I've never heard the report. Has it ever been done?
It has been done.
It has been done? Okay.
Fortunately, we've had reports before coming out of the treasurer's office.
Okay.
They have given. I keep that on the agenda to be transparent with the people.
Right.
Because when I decided to run, and when the people elected me, I owe them a duty to be honest and transparent. And I know that people were thinking, all this money is coming to Selma.
Who's stealing the money?
And I want them to know. Billy Young wants to know too. And so I want to make sure that I keep that at the forefront. Like every work session, I'll say it. Okay, we're down to tornado disaster funds. Any money came in, And so I do that to just be honest and let people know what's going on.
Well, the street committee from time to time will say, well, we got a lot of money that's coming to the city, but I don't see it. Somebody must be stealing it, but transparency discourages that kind of thought, because sometimes when you don't disclose, even if you're honest, and even if there's nothing wrong, it creates an air of suspicion. So I understand that. Yes. So
this is taxpayer money,
right?
And one of my basic tenets of not just my faith, but as a human being and as a son of W.W. Young is, Billy, be honest. Even if you tell people something they don't want to hear, you got to tell them the truth. And so that's what my job is. And, it not won me a whole lot of friends or whatever, or a Facebook star, but to me, I feel like I'm doing my job when I'm telling the truth.
So now, one of the negatives for Selma's government has been what is perceived as tension that exists between the mayor and the city council and the city council president. What are your thoughts on that first?
Because that is a lot, talking to the voters this time, going out, talking to a whole lot of people. That's one of the things this question that you asked me, that's one of the things they ask me. And I answer them truthfully. And the way I answer them truthfully is going by the numbers. Randy, over 90% of the recommendations and the requests from the mayor's office that are presented to the Selma City Council, the Selma City Council has approved. And that's not only the Selma City Council approving it, but that's Billy Young voting for it. Over 90% of the items, the things that the mayor wanted the council to do, I have voted yes and in the affirmative of it. And furthermore, as the council president, and I don't do this to get thank yous from the mayor or anybody else, but as the council president, I'm responsible for creating the agenda for the meeting. And so I create the regular agenda, but I'm also responsible for creating what is known as the consent agenda for the meeting. So after we have our work sessions, and after I've heard from council members, from the mayor, from his assistant, whoever, about the particular items, unless I've heard a council member that has strong disagreement with an issue or with a particular item, I place that item on the consent agenda at the beginning of the meeting and so for the council to vote on and to approve.
At the regular council
At
meeting.
the regular council meeting on those second and fourth Tuesdays of every month. At the beginning of the meeting is maybe the fourth item on the meeting. We have the consent agenda. And though a lot of those items on that consent agenda are requests and recommendations coming from the mayor. So when people ask me this question, I answer them this way. Over 90% of the things the mayor has requested of me, I have voted for it. To me, that shows that I am not only working with this mayor, but that I also have deference for this mayor, whereas I go along with what he has asked. And so I have personally put in myself, regardless, I have to put out outside noise. I can't listen to chatter. I have to do what's right. I have to do what's lawful. I have to do what's best for Selma. If the mayor brings to me a recommendation that I agree with and that I believe, I'm going to be that first vote of yes. Or I'm going to even put the vote on the consent agenda. So hopefully that the council will see that. So I have supported this agenda that has been presented through the years. And I know that's not what's said. I know that others have not said that. But I respectfully disagree with them and ask them to look at the numerics, look at the numbers, look at the data to show that this council, and I'm speaking not just for me, but for my colleagues that serve on the council, who I am grateful to serve with, that we, not me, we have supported this mayor's recommendations, the majority, the substantial majority of them.
Now, when they take the vote, do you vote first or last, or how does that go?
Usually, council president votes yes, and then the wards. So you start off with council president, then you go wards 1, 2, 3, and so on.
Okay. Is there a reason that you don't vote last?
It was, I'm going to be honest, this was one of those things when I got into office, that's the way it was set up prior to me becoming a council member. I think George Evans, when he was council president, they did it that way. I didn't see a need to, change it. Whatever. I look at things sometimes, I had enough of broken things not to bother things that appear to not be broken. And so, I don't just break stuff and then just put it back together. If that was working, then go along. And so that's what we did.
Well, I guess so. What happens with if there's a tie vote? It just depends on the order of the vote, then.
It's usually the order of vote because by me voting, you got 9 people eligible to vote.
Right.
So in case there shouldn't be a tie, because because
it's 5-4. Right.
Yeah.
But so, in terms of attendance, though, if you don't have enough people, there's an even amount of people at a meeting, then does that change?
You've got to have at least 5 to have the meeting. Right. So my vote would just be 1 in whatever that majority would be. So
now let's talk about the 10%.
Okay.
What happens with the 10%? And it seems to me that sometimes the work session and the regular city council meeting one can be just as long as the other. But in theory, it should not be that way. So what are your thoughts on the 10%? What happens and where does the breakdown happen, and how can you, as city council president, facilitate a smoother relationship between the council and mayor in that 10%?
Within the 10%, that area where there's disagreement, and let me say this, I said 90 just because I like to be
nice. I got you.
But it's actually more than,
I'm just saying that's my goodness, 90%.
It's really higher than
most people would be glad to get.
That's an A.
That's an A. And I'm not taking sides. I'm just saying, that's not a. And see, what happens is a lot of times here recently people say, well, that 10% is critical, and they talk about the situation with the cameras and the police department and the fire department and the appointment powers, and that may fall in that under the 10%. And so some people are passionate about those issues. But go ahead.
And there lies a lot of passion on the 10% or whatever that percentage is, because what happens is, and I've always, to everybody that's working in city government, I look at them as if they want the best for self. I look at that for Mayor Perkins. I look at for every council member that they want the best. I want the best for Selma. That's why we got involved wanting the best. So I show that deference even in the 10%. For instance, um, when I first got in, there was a cap. There is a cap of the $5,000 limit for the mayor. And so when we got in, one of the things, again, I'm trying to show deference to the mayor, and I'm trying to also show him and show everybody. Billy Young is willing to work with anybody. I've worked with everybody over the years. And I said, I've made a recommendation to the council that the cap increase to $10,000. This was solo. This was me. This is Billy Young pouring his heart out, trying to show everybody, y'all, I really want to work with everybody. I want the mayor to know that I'm right. I offered to make the cap, increase the cap to $10,000. And the mayor told me, thank you, but no thanks. He turned that down. And so that never did come to a vote. But I say, just like acting that way, just like offering and trying to say, olive branch, here you go, take it, I want to work with you. That's how I have dealt with even that 10%. An understanding and knowing you have a strong position, but as my mayor, you are my mayor, I'm going to show you deference. And I'm going to try to work with you on things that I truly can work with you. But every person has an opinion and a position, just like everybody has a nose. And so for those things that go down to my core understanding of government, of checks and balances, of the branches of government, on those things, I take a position of protecting our government, protecting our branches. You know, a lot of people talk about democracy and all that. I believe in it. I believe that one person should not have all power. I believe in that, just like when they created this country all those years ago to escape kings and queens and a monarchy. I believe in that. And I believe that even comes down to this local level, that powers are to be split up and divided, not to just be held.
Checks and balances.
Exactly. And so for a lot of, within that 10%, I'm protecting the branch of government. I'm protecting our government as we know it. And I hope history will go back and review to see that the time that I've been here, that I have not been a stumbling block, but I've been a guardrail, trying to protect our government, protect our city, and protect our individuals. Just like those documents, like the Constitution. The Constitution is to protect the rights of minority. You're not going to always be in the majority. You might be a minority situation. We have to have something that protects folks' rights. And that's why I look at it from serving on the council, because I'm only one vote on the council. A lot of people think, oh, he's council president. I don't have a super vote. I only have one vote like everybody else. So I use my vote off of my beliefs. And my beliefs are not to be someone that holds anybody down from progress or vindictive or trying to be mean or anything. My position is I have to do what's morally, ethically, and lawfully right. And in addition to that, when I can find wiggle room between the mayor's office and the council, I have.
Now, did you make that offer publicly about the 10,000? Now, here recently, I understand there's some kind of has a new restriction been put in place that says you can't spend over $1 without the council approval.
Yes, that came about, and that was and one of the things sometimes people don't see the meetings that lead up to decisions. But we had an auditor come in and give us and provide us an audit report. And within that audit report, they had some findings in there. And while we did get a passing audit, thank goodness, there were some things financially. For instance, there are votes that the council approved on expenditures that have taken months ago. and those payments have not been made.
Mm.
But yet we continue to make payments on new purchases and new invoices. So for me, it was a simple thing after looking at the audit and after consulting people in finance was, okay, let's make sure that we are writing checks that we can cash.
So it could be confusing, in other words,
It can be.
because you don't know what's left that still needs to be paid versus how much money is left in the. But I guess in theory, though, I guess if the right accounting procedures are being used, some of that money shouldn't be touched.
Yeah, exactly. Because you got this budget is huge, and it was. Wish it could be bigger.
Right.
At the end, I wish it was more than the budget. But it's a good bit of money, and it's a lot of restricted accounts. You got so many different line items. Every time I look at the budget, oh, that's another line item. Forgot about that one. Forgot that. So you got all these different monies, and yeah, you can say, Selma has $10 million in the bank. You might have $10 million in the bank, but that money might be restricted.
It's already committed.
And it only can be used for this. It can't be used to
Right.
pay day-to-day bills.
Right, and you have a general fund too, though.
Yes, sir.
And so, does much money get put in the general fund?
Not nearly as much as we need to be put in there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's based off of sales tax revenue. See, when you create a budget, all a budget is a forecast of what you hope you'll receive in the year. So if that budget is passed in September of one year, and it's saying that we're going to get, it's projecting that we're going to get $10 million in sales tax. Well, it might be a tough year, and you might not get $10 million in sales tax. You might get $8 million. Well, that's why when you're doing your budgeting, you have to try to be as cautious and precise as possible, because hopefully you'll get more than what you projected. But if you get under what you projected, then you get into some trouble, and then you have to start getting rid of city services. People's payroll can't be met. It's a whole lot of other things that go into it when you are dealing with the budget. So with this particular, with the dollar, this was not to be ugly to anybody. This was not to try to fight anybody. This was business. This was us making sure Selma was able to maintain its solvency, to make sure that we were paying our bills. And there was hoopla about the dollar and a hoopla about the meeting, but we had a meeting last Thursday. And if you go back and look at that special call meeting, we went through, and as council president, I took the lead of going through each request made by the mayor, looking at the precise account number, the funding source for that particular item, and then going into detail asking how much do we have in this line item to cover this expense. So if people look back at last Thursday's special call, it didn't get a lot of attention, but the work got done. We went through each one of those things precisely, making sure we had the money so that when the check is cut, it can be fulfilled.
So in other words, if the mayor, and I'm not directing this necessarily towards Mayor Perkins, but if whoever the mayor is decides to buy or purchase an item and it's say $3,000, because the mayor is not intimately familiar with the budget like the city council would be, you could spend over $1,000 and not know it
easily.
Or you could buy 2 or 3 things and not know how much money has been allocated or what's, like you're just saying, what is earmarked for a particular area. Since that special call meeting, have you had an opportunity to gauge or to talk or speak with the mayor publicly about his reaction to the special call meeting?
No, sir, I have not.
Okay.
But I'm grateful that the council got together, we had quorum, and that we did the business of the city and made sure that those bills were paid. And the night that we passed, when we passed that motion, I said, before we pass it, I said, this should be only a temporary measure. And that once we get a clear understanding, because we took another vote to have an accounting firm come in and help us with all of these bills. People may not understand, but we had a treasurer. She retired. And so then we had somebody else to step up in the interim position. So there's been transition. And a lot's going on when you have different people come out of positions, this and other. We're in political season, so there will ultimately be a new treasurer coming. So there's a lot of, I'm not going to use the word confusion, but there's a lot of adjusting that's taking place. And so this motion is only temporary. And at the time, once we have a clear understanding, once this budget has been cleared and we see that we do have all the funding, we're able to make these bills, then I would be one to vote to withdraw the motion and go back to our previous way of transacting. And so this, like I said, this wasn't ill-intended. This was advised from financiers and also advised to do what was best for city of Selma financially. And that's our job.
So now, at the end of the day, the city council has the purse string.
Yes, sir.
And you have to sign off on how money is being spent. What about, can you as city council president and the city council, are there ways to develop new streams of income? Is there a way to impact tourism? What can you do along those lines? And I guess the worst word to use is taxes. Nobody wants to hear increase in taxes. But so where are you? How do you? What can you do to increase or to find new sources of revenue?
I am glad to have that question. If you notice, my style I got big because I feel that one of the requirements that's not listed for counselors is what can you do to increase the city's ability to offer services. And one of the ways that you increase, the only way really to increase the services is to have more money to do it with. And so one of the things that I take pride in of serving as council president was the creation of the revenue committee. And the revenue committee was created to locate and to form ways to find revenue, recurring revenue. Grants are great, but they are non-recurring.
They're not sustainable.
You
don't know if you're going to get it the next year or not.
Amen.
Well, just like with the COVID and disaster funds, those monies are only there for that moment, and you're not going to get them back again. And you can't base your future budget on what you got from those kinds of forces. So what happened with the
revenue? And you can't base payroll off of grants.
And you certainly can't base payroll.
You'll really get messed up. So the revenue committee got started, and the revenue committee consisted of myself, Councilman Hartfield, and Councilman Randolph. And one of the first things that we looked at was this film permit that we offer to anybody. Anybody could go down to City Hall and do a film permit application. And then the council would have to meet to approve that application. And it was only like $250. So you had these HBO and
these mega companies.
$250 is a quarter.
Right. That's lunch.
Right. For them it was nothing. And so a lot of the people that were, because there are exceptions, if it's got something to do like you're doing a school project or if it's something about the news, that this doesn't even apply to you. But to these major entities,
motion picture companies.
Thank you. Yes, that use Selma, because a lot of people use Selma. Right. A lot of people are benefiting off of Selma that aren't living in Selma.
Right.
But anyway, so you've got these companies that are just paying a measly $250. Revenue committee looked at it. What we did was we looked at several different film permit ordinances from other communities in Alabama. And Selma was like at the bottom. And so we raised that up to now when you request a film permit in Selma, if you do it within 30 days of the request of the date, it's $1,000. And then if you try to choose it, if it's less than 30 days, which means I've got to call a special call meeting now I got to call council members in.
You're
The
using other
clerks,
people's time.
exactly. The clerks got to do some extra work. They got to expedite this.
Right.
So it's just like in the state of Alabama, an expedited fee. If you want to have something filed faster, you do an expedited fee. It's $1,500. So that ended up generating a little more revenue. Every little bit helps. And so that was one of the things that the revenue committee had.
Let me on that point though, now we could say that Birmingham and Huntsville have a greater population, but in terms of historic value, Selma is on the same level.
Yes, sir.
In terms of what people would want to get from it.
Yes, sir.
And so I guess my question would be, uh, is there any look at or assessment of the organization financially that's requesting the permit? In other words, if I have an annual revenue of $50 million a year, I can afford more than somebody that only has a revenue of 5. Is that taken into consideration, or have you gotten to that point yet?
We haven't gotten to that point. But Randy, during this interview, I'm gonna go back and study this myself because you just gave me another idea that I didn't think about. So
to be fair, to different companies,
right.
I'm just curious.
I'm curious now, so I'm gonna see if there's any type of way we could do that adjustment to create some more revenue. So thank you. So yeah. But that was one of the things the revenue committee did. Okay. And another thing that the revenue committee did was we looked at the occupancy fee. Mm-hmm. The occupancy fee is something associated when anybody gets a room at one of our hotels or Airbnb or wherever in Selma. Well, most of the people that are getting those rooms are people that don't live here. They're coming in. When people, that's a part of our tourism economy. Mm-hmm. And so we tapped into that, and we looked at occupancy fees from other cities, Wetumpka, right. People that are similarly Prattville, right. not even Birmingham and Huntsville, but similarly situated.
Population-wise, right.
And we saw that our rate was a lot lower than what others were offering. Mm. So we raised that, and that ended up giving us a pretty good projection in. I think we got an additional $250,000 that we weren't getting by just raising it up 1 point, And so things like that, the revenue committee is charged with looking at ways to find money. And another thing that I'm very proud of too, that in terms of revenue, when I first got into the council, there were over 40 businesses that were on the delinquent list. Either they just weren't paying anything anymore, or either they have closed and we didn't know about it. But we worked with our collector, Avenue, which is a company that collects our taxes. And I think now we've got that list down to about 19, which is good. But it's not going to be good until we get it to everybody, because it's not fair for one business to be paying and they're open and the other business is still open and enjoy. Why have it if everybody's not going to be treated equally? So that is something we're continuing to look at. So those types of measures, looking through the budgets, finding the money. A lot of times what we have to do now is, because we don't have money to fulfill all the needs, we have to be creative with our budget. So we have to look at it line by line and see, okay, this might be the month of August now. So really we only got September left, and we may not have enough money in this particular line item, but here we can go to another line item.
But there's money over and bring it over.
And so that requires you to constantly look at the budget. The budget is a breathing organism. We've gone through that thing a lot of times to find the money for things that are necessary and needed. And that was one of the advantages of coming into this position, was not only the legal background, but also understanding of finance. I'm a tax lawyer. So that helped me to be able to, find those types of things when needed and when necessary.
Mm-hmm. Now, there was a time when Selma was second to none when it came to a recreation for youth. The baseball team, the Little League baseball teams, and we were winning all kinds of tournaments statewide and regional and national. but it doesn't seem to be the same kind of energy or support or programming for the city's sports. Where are we with that, and do you have any thoughts on that?
You know, one of the things that I have understood more, one of the things that I've learned in this position is elected officials cannot do this by themselves. I admit it, I came in, I was like, gonna change the world, fix the world, make Selma the best city in the world, and I still believe we can do that. I know I can't do it by myself. I know that even the mayor and us working together can't do it by ourselves. The people of Selma have to get involved in this, especially for quality of life stuff like recreation. I am a proud product of Selma City Schools, Selma extracurricular activities. I was a baby snake trying to play football. I wanted to be a great football player, but that went in the books. But I remember that when we had a game on a Friday night in Selma, Alabama, and Selma High School was playing a game, the whole town was shut down. And everybody, mama, grandmama, every big mama, everybody was at that stadium. I went to a game last year and I looked around and didn't see everybody like I used
Almost
to.
anybody was.
It was, and I've gone to a couple of games. And, when it's a big rivalry game, homecoming, people come out.
Right.
But I just remember every game, you could be playing, Little House on the Prairie, and everybody was still there, And so one of the things, and my thoughts on this, especially for recreation, we need the community to come in and get back in this thing and show not just school spirit, but community spirit. Selma High is Selma's high school. It bears the name. So, whether you are a alum of 88 or 98, you still got to support your school. So we need people to get back involved. In recreation, I'm pleased to say one of the things that I'm very, very proud of what the recreation department was able to get done. And by the blessings and the help of Senator Rob Stewart, was to get that beautiful track fixed out there at Memorial Stadium. That to me, I remember when the pictures went out, the crowd went crazy. Selma went just all over. That was Selma, I know. Everybody loved it. It created something that made you remember how it is to be a Selmian. Things like that, partnerships. And I'm grateful for the partnerships with individuals like Senator Stewart. And I'm grateful that I've had the ability to work with Senator Stewart when the tornado happened. And I don't know if Senator Stewart ever told the whole story, or Representative Prince Chestnut, who are two men that I've known. I've known Representative Chestnut my entire life. He's 1 year older than I am. And Rob Stewart, he's family. I've known him forever, since he was born. And so I've known this, so I know what they're about. But after the tornado hit on a Thursday, I'll never forget, Saturday, Representative Chestnut and Senator Stewart, they called and said, Billy, get out here to the stadium. We've got the majority leader of the House is here. And we've got members of different districts, different representatives and different senators. They all came to Selma on that Saturday. We had two leaders that reached out to their colleagues on the state level and got them here. And they said, Billy, be out there. I pulled myself together and got out there. And they saw the stadium in its condition. And I remember those individuals in leadership working with them, saying, we're going to do something about this. We're going to help. And those men, Representative Chestnut, Senator Stewart, Speaker of the House, all of those, they were men of their word. When the budget came, I was in Montgomery during lunchtime. I would walk over to the State House. They put Selma in that budget. And Selma was not in that budget previously. And we were able to get $750,000 to fix that stadium. I know. I was in on those
So
conversations.
this was bipartisan.
It
Both
was.
Republican and
And
Democrat.
Democrat. Because that's another thing. When stuff happens, especially on the local level, forget all of that. Whatever.
Partisan politics.
All politics really is local. Because when I need my street fixed, it doesn't matter who. I need my street fixed.
Right.
When I need that stadium fixed, it doesn't get. We have to, we have to start understanding that we can disagree on some things, but we really do agree on core things. And that core thing, getting that stadium repaired and in that condition, that was a core belief. And I'm thankful to have the opportunity to work with those individuals to get it done.
Now, what about leadership development and youth? How do you feel about where do we need to go, and what can you do in your position as city council president to help impact that?
As a kid of a former educator, for me, education, before I could go to law school and be a lawyer, I had to be a teacher first. That was my daddy. And so he's like, you need to teach schools. And so, and I like teaching, I enjoy it. So I have a passion for education because I feel that education has been the one reliable thing that has helped everybody by being, and I'm not even saying going off to college, but being educated, going to school, elementary school, going to middle school, going to high school, you're learning something. These things help you in life. So I think, and also you can learn leadership. I'm a product of Selma City Schools and also a product of the Selma High Student Government Association, led by the late, great Nancy Gardner Sewell. Miss Sewell is the individual that taught me parliamentary procedure, Robert's Rules of Order. I was like, Robert, who? And she is the one that took us through how to call, how to make a motion, which motions take priority, all those types of things. I can remember it just like yesterday, sitting in the Selma High School library, us going through how to properly do those things. That started in my 9th grade year at Selma High School. So when you are taught, and those things helped me become a lawyer, they helped me in my life and everything. When you're taught, you have a responsibility to do the same for those that come behind you. So as council president, one of the greatest accomplishments that I feel under our tenure was the creation of the council president shadow program. And I think, Randy, you had a chance to come maybe once or twice.
Yeah, I've been following it.
These young people, everybody's not a star athlete. Everybody isn't a star player in the band. Some of us are government geeks. Some of us like reading legislation and going to sleep on that. We enjoy that. There are still some children, there's some students right now that enjoy government. They want to learn this stuff. So we created the Council President Shadow Program, where we offered it to every student in Selma. And so we created from that program a Selma City Council for the youth. They had their own council. They had all 8 wards, they had a council president, they had a mayor, they had an attorney, they had a treasurer. And one time I had to feel it as a treasurer, they beat me up, real bad. But they learned the same things that I did. I can remember Miss Sewell teaching me Robert's Rules of Order. And I remember sitting there teaching them Robert's Rules of Order, how to conduct the meeting. And they loved it. They worked hard for that. And they enjoyed it. And they got a chance. So I'm proud of that. That's leadership development with our youth. Because one day, I won't be able to serve in a position. I won't be here anymore. None of us. We've got to, instead of waiting to create leaders, we got to create young leaders now. And another thing that I'm proud during the tenure I've had as council president is we created what they call the Student of the Month. The Student of the Month, once a month, a student, whether they're in public schools, whether they are in private schools, or whether they're homeschooled, one student is acknowledged. They come before the council. We read off their accomplishments, their family, their moms and dads come, their teachers, their principal, any supporters that come. We put them on the pedestal because we need to show off our children. So many times you hear about the negative things, but there are a lot of good children doing good things. And so the city council, we created that student of the month where they come and they get, and then we would give them something, a token to acknowledge them. You know, it's nice for somebody to say thank you, but it's also nice for somebody to give you a little something that they're going to be able to buy a quarter pounder or a Big Mac or something. You know, whatever you want to do. Mm-hmm. But that to me, I want young people to know that you are not just a cliche. We actually do care about you, and we actually value your opinion. And a lot of times I've spoken to young people and have gotten ideas from them because they see things differently.
Out of the mouth of babes.
Because it's honest. It comes from a place of not being tarnished or whatever, but it's coming from, these are the facts. Let's do it. And so those are some of the things. And then, Randy, we, with our discretionary money, I'm proud of my colleagues on the council, not just myself, but I'm proud of all of them, even the ones that I don't always agree with. I'm proud of the fact that when those school kids, when they come before the council, or their sponsors come before the council, or their parents, whatever, asking for donations, we find that money in that discretionary money. We may not be able to give them as much as they need, but we're able to give them something. Even like when the students go to the World Series, I remember I had to call a special call meeting just to make sure those students had some money to go to the World, because they weren't just representing themselves. They represented all of us. They represented the city of Selma. And so whatever we have been able to do, one of the best things is this council has been very pro-youth development, and pro-education.
Now, as we're beginning to wind down, we still have some issues in Selma. Some of the top problems that I hear on a regular basis. But we know we've gotten the downtown streets and infrastructure has been done, fortunately. But out of those, outside of that 50 or 70 blocks, you've got the rest of Selma. We've got cosmetic issues in terms of the way downtown and other neighborhoods look. We've got some blighted areas. We have some abandoned homes. Yes. We got grown-up grass. When everybody's complaining about the potholes, you know, and everybody wants to have a larger selection of restaurants, yes, sit-down eateries, you know, what can you do as council president to address these issues and make improvements?
I can continue to do what I have started, and that is to locate and find the money from what's available to us now. We have to stretch the money in the budget. I am thankful that we've been able to meet a lot of the emergency needs, because what's happened, Randy, with a lot of those areas that you're talking about now, because they've been neglected for so long, they become an emergency. It's just like, you know, with your own stuff. If you just keep on not paying attention to it gets worse.
Kick the can down the road.
And unfortunately, I came in with the can and been kicked not just down the road, but off the road. You know, one of the things, Brandon, that I want people to clearly understand is this council has had to deal with more expensive expenditures than previous councils, probably in the history. Now, when we got elected, the city of Selma was paying on a 2016 warrant that had been taken out in 2016. We were paying about $18,000 a month on that. Okay. Unfortunately, I get elected, we get elected, it balloons, it's due to balloon during our tenure in 2022. So that payment went from $18,000, I mean like $18,800 a month. It went from that to $188,000 a month. Wow. It went to $2.1 million a year that we weren't paying. The budget was already strapped. And so now here we come. And it's beyond strapped, you know.
And this was an agreement made before you came to
Way
office,
before I
but you got to honor the commitment.
Yes, Selma has.
So how do you do that? What do you do?
Well, first of all, after much prayer, because when I realized, boom, this gonna happen while I'm in office, 2022. That would be the worst thing, is to be in office, you can't pay an obligation. You're supposed to, the city of Selma's name, just like ours, it's got to be good.
Right.
All right, so what we did was, okay, you got an increased payment. You got a budget. You got these expenditures from these separate accounts. This account is supposed to pay this particular expenditure. But now you got an increase on this particular line item. You don't have enough money in that line item. What are you going to do? What you got to do is you got to stretch your budget. You got to, we have some smart people on our council under the leadership of our council finance chairman, Troy Harville, and myself, and the rest of the council. But Councilman Harville was the leader of this. We were able to find out that some of the money from a previous bond that was paid, it was still being collected into that particular line item. So that line item was untouched. It was growing. It was growing. Now it was still not enough to pay it.
But it was on an interest.
Right. We also found out, after getting legal opinions from the attorney that we acquired, Ben Goldman, the Hand Airedale law firm out of Birmingham, we were able to find out that that line item from that bond could be used to help us with these emergencies that were popping up. So those monies that were restricted for those emergencies and for those capital improvement projects, we could now use the bond fund money to pay for that. And we could take that money that was going to be used for that and now put it over to pay that obligation.
Well, now, was it not possible, or is it still not possible, to refinance that $2 million a year?
We tried. What we did was we contacted a financial agency. Selma, unfortunately, prior to my service on the council, lost its credit rating.
Right.
We didn't have it; just was non-existent.
Right.
Then when we got it by being in compliance, making sure the audits were done on time, making sure that some of these, in fact, the auditors have praised us about some of these parameters that this council and the previous council put in on watching the finances. We got up to what you call a BB. That's not the best. It ain't the worst credit rating, but it's still not enough to help you refinance the way you need to refinance. And so our hope is that in the coming year or two, we've got 6 years left on this bond.
$2 million
payment. Got 6 years left on that. So what I pray and hope that we're able to do is not to necessarily refinance in the next year or two, but see if there's a way where we can work out something where we're able to maybe perhaps
stretch it, and
that way free up.
I got you.
You follow me, yes. To free up to do some of these other
things.
That's
why it's so important to be able to communicate with people and talk to folks.
Yes.
And we're out of time, but we're going over a little bit because this is an important position, and we're talking about the future of the city. We know that another main concern is going to be public safety, and that would include the police department and the fire department. And I guess my concern is that after the COVID money and after the disaster funds, in terms of finances, during that same period, you also increase salaries and benefits for law enforcement. Can we afford it? Is it sustainable? And where are we with public safety?
Where we are with public safety is that yes. First answer, yes, we're able to sustain it. That's why we have to be very, very careful. People wanted us to come in and give raises to everybody from the jump. We couldn't do that because what we would have done is create something that wasn't sustainable. Then people are going to start getting laid off, getting terminated. So what we did was I took a very, very close look to see what actually we could afford to do. And so those raises that we gave, not just for the police, but later on we came back and we gave one for the firefighters too.
Right.
Because in public safety, you can't do one and not do
That's
the other.
public safety.
It's public safety. And so what we did was we created something that even during those light times, remember I talked about the budget, how some years you may get a little more and some years you may not.
Right.
Even in those lighter times, we still are able to meet payroll. Now, that's part of the reason the raises came up substantially, because I can't remember the exact numbers. I always want to be truthful. I can't remember the exact amount, but I want to say, Randy, the beginning officers were getting paid below 30, I think. I'll have to go back to make sure, but my memory makes me think it was a little below 30. But we got them up to 40 grand and higher. For us, that was a humongous step. We don't have the money that Montgomery and other places have. So that was a big step for us. Mm-hmm. But we needed to do more, actually. But we got it up to save the police force that we had. Mm-hmm. Because when we first got in, mm-hmm. Chief Muhammad was the assistant chief. And he did this in public. He gave us a report of the condition of the police department. Mm-hmm. And at one time, we didn't have very many officers on the street. Of course, this wasn't advertised to the bad guys.
You don't want to.
You can't, but he let us know.
Right.
At that time,
we're in pretty bad shape.
We were in some bad shape, but what we did,
vulnerable,
very. And so the council got together, looked at the money, and we were able to keep the officers that we had, and then recruit a few more officers. And so I think we've got over 30 now that are. We still need more, but I am a strong believer, and I'm going to be truthful with you. We are better now with public safety than we were when I first started.
Now, as we begin to close, we've got the appointment powers issues on the table, and that seems to be another sticking point about who should. Whether the council should retain the appointment powers, or should the mayor have the appointment powers. There's a few schools of thought that deal with what the Code of Alabama says about who should do what, and as I understand it, really the appointment powers belong to the council, but the council obviously has the option of being able to give some to the mayor. Where are you on appointment powers?
I am one who follows the law, and you phrased it correctly. Under Alabama law, the appointment powers are vested, not all of them, but for chief, fire chief, treasurer, and tax collector. Those all belong by statute and by case law to the council. The council can choose to give it. Now, I didn't come in taking appointment powers from anybody. The council, the previous council, and previous councils have had those authorities. I am under the position of this, and I said this in a forum, and I don't want anyone to take it ugly, but my belief in government, as I've stated, is you have to have separation of powers. You have to have checks, and you have to have balances. No one person needs to have everything. I believe that the executive branch has 14 or 16 different department heads that they have, and the council has nothing to do with it. They can't. By law, the council. We're talking about only 4, and you're talking about the mayor has a whole lot to deal with. I believe that this council has acted wisely in regards to the appointment powers. And I've said this at one of the forums. You can look in a newspaper and see that one of the appointments of the mayor is already serving time. This was an appointment from the mayor, and that was out of the fire department. And he's serving time, and not only serving the time for an unrelated matter, but still has to go answer allegations of theft from the city while serving as an appointee of the mayor. So one of the mayor's appointments, we know already, has been accused of theft from the city. Now, just a few weeks ago, we had another appointment of the mayor that was accused of theft from the city. So
Was that the IT?
That's the yes,
Okay.
that was in the IT department.
Mm-hmm.
And so that to me makes me look at things that saying, yes, the council was wise to hold, because I personally believe that the mayor has enough appointments. If you got
I think
16,
it's 17 or 16.
it's something like that.
Something like that.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of them,
Right.
And so, and also, I think when you're dealing with public safety, and this is not a hit at any mayor or anybody. This is not about a person.
Mm.
But this is just my thought. When you're dealing with issues of public safety, if, for instance, what if you did get someone in office to serve as mayor and they weren't a kind human being and they wanted to use the police chief to go out and do things? And I'm not saying by no means
to weaponize.
I'm just using an example.
To weaponize the police department.
Yes. That is one of the things that I look at because the chief is only answering to one person. Mm-hmm. I would rather someone with that much authority to answer to multiple individuals, not just me, but to multiple individuals than just having to answer to one person. That to me goes to the heart of why the government was set up the way that it was set up with an executive branch.
Checks and balances.
And checks and balances.
Well, I've asked a question here recently. I said, well, maybe, is it not important for law enforcement to be independent? But that's another thought. Right. That's a whole other can of worms. But the mayor does have approximately 16 or 17 department heads. Yes, and I think one of the complaints that comes out of his office is how the interaction between those department heads and their financial needs are met with the city council and the interaction between the council and the department heads. And sometimes they make requests that you can't honor. I don't know if you feel like they're top, they've been accused of being top heavy, and that there's some people that are duplicated, are being paid for doing duplicating of services, and that's money that can be pulled from, like you were saying, one area and used to another. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that is when a department head comes before the council making a request, my first thing, I read it, I read what the request is. And then if it's something that I believe has to be, I do what I can to find the resources to provide. Very seldom do I go against a request for funding for something from my department. That's just me. I can't speak for everybody on the council. Mm-hmm. But as for me, I believe that if they come to something with us, I believe that it's important for me to try to help them.
But in your position as city council president, you can put or not put their request on the agenda to be voted on.
Right. And if, let's say, for instance, I chose not to put it on the consent agenda, any council member up there can still bring it up for us to vote on. The consent agenda is really my way of really to help the mayor's agenda
air it out
and get it done. Right. That's my way of trying to move government along. Because it is so ironic, Randy. Sometimes the consent agenda, last night I think we had 22 items on there. All right, it takes 15 minutes for those 22 items, which we talked about a lot at work sessions before. Mm-hmm. And then we'll spend another 2 hours on 2 or 3 items. Mm-hmm. And, but the bulk of the work is done at the beginning of that 15 minutes of meeting.
Right.
And so, but, that's what I deal with. That's what we deal with.
Right.
But I do believe, though, when the department head does come, that I try my best to help facilitate whatever that request is.
Closing remarks. Anything you'd like to say? This is your time to say what you'd like to say. I don't know what your campaign slogan is or any of that, but now's your time.
Randy, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for what you do as a true journalist. You keep us where we need to be with honesty, and I appreciate that. I just want people to know that Billy Young is honored and grateful to serve not just one person, all the people of Selma, Alabama. And that if you see me on the street, I will talk to you. I enjoy talking to you. I also want people to understand that Selma, Alabama is my family. I don't have a large biological family. And so the people of Selma have offered themselves to be my brothers, to be my sisters, to be my big mama, and everybody else. And that I enjoy doing things to improve the quality of life here. I also want everyone to understand that while you may not always agree with me, you may not always like what I have to say, but I'm always going to tell you what I believe that you need to hear. I'm always going to tell you the truth. And that my actions as council president, that I have operated morally, ethically, and legally, and that I have offered myself to the people of Selma in an honest way, and that I believe in Selma, Alabama. I am here for a reason, because I believe that this city changed the world before, and that it can change the world in a positive way again. And I just want people to love Selma just like I love Selma too. And so I'm asking that everyone, if you have the tough questions, I can provide you with the real answers. And that also, when you go to vote on a poll, vote to the polls on August the 26th, 2025, that you look at my heart, forget all of the things that you may have heard or somebody else, but that you get to know Billy Young for yourself. And you will find that I'm a human being just like everybody else, and that my true passion and love is for God and for this city. And that please, on August 26, 2025, go to the polls and let's rise together and vote for Billy Young as our Selma City Council president. And I thank everybody for the opportunity to serve.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, and we'll talk to you the next time.
Thank you, sir. Bye, everybody.